Hi, everyone. Today we have with us Dr. Ted Jaenicke from the Pennsylvania State University. This conversation is extra special because Penn State is my alma mater and I have taken classes with Ted. And I can say that I've taken one class and it was one of the hardest classes I've ever taken, largely because Ted, you essentially taught me how to read research papers. I had very little experience of that, so I also like to take the opportunity to thank you
Uh,
for that class. Um,
that was a fun class to teach. It was sort of an food IO class, and it was. I don't. I'm not teaching that class anymore, so it's one for the history books. It was a great class.
well, I benefited, and I'm sure many others who were taking the class with me benefited as well. And on the topic of fun class, can you share with us some fun fact about who you are and how did you get started in the area of food economics?
Well, in terms of fun facts, I mean, this is not people that know me know this about me. I'm a foodie. Um,
Oh.
I and what's that mean? My own definition is that that's someone who thinks about food a lot, reads about food a lot, likes to eat food, likes to cook food, likes to talk about food, everything food, right? And so lots of people know that about me. That's not a surprise. But one of the things that not everybody knows about me and my foodiness is that I'm a really big believer in behavioral economics and the strong power of marketing. And so I have adopted lots of food rules, heuristics to sort of live by when it comes to food and to keep me healthy and all that sort of stuff. And the biggest one is that I try to eat like a vegan for my first two meals of the day. And this is has a basis in two of my foodie books. So there's two books by former New York Times food writer Mark Bittman, called VB6 or Vegan Before 6 p.m.
Ah,
That was sort of mostly a health-based argument to be a vegan before 6 p.m. Um, and then there's another book, sort of a book about climate change policy, but it's by this really interesting author named Jonathan Safran Foer, who's both a novelist and a nonfiction writer. He's written a couple food-oriented nonfiction books, and he wrote a book called We Are the Weather, which is about how to get people thinking about climate change and what individuals might do. And
mhm.
he also essentially recommended the same thing, try to eat like a vegan for two meals out of the day, for from an environmental standpoint. So I started doing the vegan before 6 mostly for health reasons, but now I chalk add environmental stuff to it as well.
That's a great segue into not even talking about the next question I had is what sparked your interest in
Yeah.
everything related to food. But yeah, maybe you've answered this question already as, if there was a person or an experience. But I also wanted to kind of comment on the fact that, you got started out thinking about so much of this in as it pertained to decision making in the health domain, if you will, and
Yeah.
then it
Yeah.
kind of also, brought in the environmental domain, and there is so much research in food economics, environmental economics about behavior, so much behavioral economics research about how you can move the needle by focusing on health issues or environmental issues or both.
Right. Right. I mean, I might digress here, so cut me off if I talk too long. But
Okay.
one of my early, I've done a fair amount of research on organic agriculture, both on the production side, but also on the consumption side. And there's a lots of uh, attempts at research. I mean, good attempts at research, but that tries to disentangle just what it is that makes people want to buy or and eat organic food. And
Mhm.
you know, my pet peeve is that it's almost impossible to disentangle those things. There's multiple reasons why consumers might want to do that. Some of them are personal health, some of them are environment, and they're very intertwined. And so I'm just trying to like go with the normally economists like to disentangle things, especially if we're trying to show causalities in some way.
That's
Um,
right.
but there are maybe some good reasons to think of things as very closely intertwined, you know? Um,
That's right. So focus on causality, but don't make it the only part
yeah,
of your
yeah.
scientific inquiry. That's a very bold comment, which
Well, I'm
I,
old school, right? So my PhD training was before um, this complete obsession with causality. So if I go back to my early days, people weren't quite so worried about causality. So
no, I think I agree with you, and there is scope. There is space for all kinds of
yeah,
research. That's
yeah.
not just one type of research. But could you tell us, the audience, about some of the, you've had a long and productive and illustrious career. What's been some of the most fulfilling aspects of your career as well as your current professional role?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, the most fulfilling thing has been working with graduate students, PhD students, over the years. And I just graduated my 19th PhD student. So,
Congratulations.
and I maybe this December will be 20. That was sort of a goal of mine before I retired, was to hit 20. So that's definitely been some of the most fulfilling. But I also, I got into this business partly because I really like working with data. So when I get lost in data, I also feel quite fulfilled. I feel like that's a really enjoyable and fulfilling part of the job as well. So those are the two. I mean, and I've also had the luxury of designing some of the courses that I've been teaching over the years, including that Food IO course that we talked about. And when your brand new course begins to resonate with some students, whether it's be a Food IO course or like I teach a food systems course about where our food's coming from, and when I get, surprised reaction from students about all the complexities of our food system, and they're like flabbergasted over certain things. I mean, that's also really fulfilling as well.
Yes, the learning aspect of
Yeah,
it and
the
imparting those.
eye-opening stuff, when you see students, uh, uh, see their eyes get opened.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, that's really been fulfilling.
I have to write that down. The hashtag, what is eye-opening about IO?
Yeah.
You came up with it, or we jointly did. Then, uh, can you describe, one project you are currently working on that you find particularly interesting? And
Yeah.
in what way have you learned something unexpected from it?
Yeah. So I'm involved in a project right now. It's part of a really big grant, but my part of the grant was I had promised, or my team had promised, to use the scanner data, which I work with a lot, use the scanner data to and estimate, discrete choice demand models of food, but to use those models to estimate the value, the willingness consumers would be willing to pay for certain attributes, including especially organic and
Hmm.
local attribute. And so that task was quite straightforward for the organic attribute since it's already coded in the data, but it was quite tricky for local since A, it's not in the data at all, and B, there's really no standardized, no real good definition of local food. And so
Right.
the thing that made the project, we had some ideas of what we would do at first, but none of them really panned out very well. And then um, uh, we came up with a very unconventional but highly practical definition of local food. And I'm actually really excited about it because I think it's got a lot of potential. Um,
Fabulous.
and so essentially, we began to think of local food not just about food that was produced locally, but food that was consumed or purchased, in this case, purchased in- intensively in a small regional area. So if we saw a product in the scanner data where 100% of the national sales were coming from a particular state, like Pennsylvania, we might be inclined to think of that brand, that
Mhm.
product as a local product, a product local to Pennsylvania. Um, if maybe if it had 80% of the sales in Pennsylvania, it still fit that definition. And so we started playing around with that definition and we looked at a number of products, including eggs and milk and packaged salad. And then we really um, did a deep dive in potato chips.
Mhm.
It just turns out, coincidentally, that Pennsylvania has lots of local potato chip brands. We're a big potato chip state. Um, and so when we applied our practical but unconventional definition to potato chips, we identified like a couple dozen brands that really appeared to
Oh,
be local. And so that was our way of recoding the data to add that piece of information. And then getting back to the research question, so we wanted to see how Pennsylvania consumers, households were valuing that local attribute. And we also wanted to know if that valuation varied across the rural urban landscape. And so what we're finding, and these are still preliminary, we're finding, and this is not necessarily just for potato chips, but for other things as well. Um, Statewide, on aggregate, the average consumer does not value local, but instead sort of expects a discount when it comes to local.
interesting.
That was surprising, but when we looked deeper at the geography, it began to make a lot more sense. And well, two things began to make more sense. One is that there were parts of Pennsylvania uh, where local attribute was more highly valued, positively valued. These were places that had some combination of low population densities, high amounts of land and agriculture, and higher incomes. So it's a mixture of those three things. But when we did the geographic analysis, we've discovered that there were plenty of places in Pennsylvania that valued local attributes, just not maybe in the big cities.
Hmm.
Um, and that began to make a lot more sense. And the other thing is that if we were to estimate these demand models using like a random coefficients kind of model, then even there, even for the average, when I said it was a negative value that people expected a discount, well, a portion, if we assuming that the coefficients had like normal distributions, then even there, a significant percentage of Pennsylvanians would still have a positive value for the local attribute, just not the average consumer. So
Right.
it's really changed my thinking on what how people might be valuing local food. Um, and of course, this is not your typical study in a farmer's market with fresh vegetables or fresh fruits. It's packaged goods in the
Right.
supermarket. But so there's caveats and there's limitations and all that. But if this really works out well, then other food researchers can use our unconventional definition to work with the scanner data to look at what,
Wow, that is really innovative. And, thank you so much
yeah.
for sharing that. That's awesome. So my next question is, we have all areas of that, where we would like to improve.
Oh,
Could you share something that you are actively trying to address or want to address?
yeah. Well, I mean, we want to improve our weaknesses, right? So what my current weaknesses are, I don't know, there's at least, I have many, but there are two that come most to mind are I'm I'm behind the times at learning some of the new technologies like AI and machine
Me
learning.
too.
And my wife is Allison was a really excellent teacher through her career, both at the high school and the college level. And she's like, don't you don't you need to understand AI better from to make sure that to improve students' learning? And the answer is yes, I need to, but I found it very difficult to find the time to get up to speed on all that and to change. And so I've been reluctant at the moment to change the way I teach. Um, but I feel like that over the next few years, that's a big goal of mine is to sort of finally bite the bullet and learn how to do that, how to teach better in the new environment of AI. Um, and a
Mhm.
related one, weakness, and something I don't know if I'm going to improve on this. I might have to just learn to live with the weakness. But as I have gotten older, you know, my research methodological skills have diminished compared to the young young professors and grad students. And, I don't want to fall behind too much on that. But on the other hand, I've kind of evolved more into a project manager kind of role
Mhm.
where I guess I've come to understand that maybe I don't need to be the leader when it comes to new methodologies and new techniques. I don't maybe need to know the most recent thinking on causal models. I just need to make sure that our team has that covered.
Yep.
Um,
Mhm.
so this other weakness of maybe not being up to speed on every piece of methodology, I I'm just learning to how to be a better manager at that, not to necessarily to take all the time to retool and become expert in everything.
Right. And I'm going to, give you pushback. I don't think that's a weakness at all. I think, I feel that we have the luxury to be able to do what we like to do, and that takes many different forms. And if, clearly you are being scientifically innovative with the study that you just described. So I will
Well,
not call it a weakness.
okay, yeah, it's learning to live within our means, so to speak.
But I thank you very much for sharing that, because I have felt, now clearly I don't have as much experience as you do, but I have felt along similar lines as well. And it's about keeping on. I think it's important to stay relevant, and we all find relevance in different ways in
Yeah,
our,
yeah.
in our profession. Um, One of the, I feel, most important questions that I ask my guests is, you looking back, is there something that you would redo? And if yes, what would that be in your career?
Um, I mean, it's hard to know. I don't want to, I don't, I feel like I've had a surprise. I didn't really have high expectations when I started out in my career. And so I feel really great about how things have turned out.
Awesome.
So so I don't have too many regrets. Um, I do have some wishes that things that might have happened. And so I one of my wishes is that I wish I had a boss, like a department head, who would have pushed me harder. In the sense, like I'm picturing a, a, a department head who's a little bit like a coach. And I'm picturing a department head who maybe, if we have our annual performance review,
Hmm.
would say something like this, that Ted, I noticed that it's been a couple of years since you had an AJAE article. What can we do to fix that? What can we do to make that happen in the next year? So in other words, I kind of wish I had a boss who would push me to keep striving for high quality research. Um, and there were different, I've had some very good department heads. So this is not a complaint about all my department heads, but I guess I kind of love the idea of a team and a coach. Um, and I would love to have a coach that pushed me just a little more.
I had never thought about that because I don't have those kinds of inspirations. But so I never think from the perspective of a department head. But I know that many people in our profession have these types of aspirations. So this is a great piece of advice for anybody tuning in. Awesome. Looking ahead,
That requires the a department head who really knows what I'm working on too, right?
sure.
And stuff. So it's a little tougher for that kind of a department head to do that kind of thing. But that's what I would have liked.
Right. No,
Especially when I was like, now I have the luxury of trying to, you know, work on really what I think is high impact research. But when you're younger, you're just trying to get all research up and running. And
that's right.
but in there, maybe in the older days is when a good coach type
Mhm.
department it might really be helpful.
I think guidance and mentorship and a little bit of not
Yeah.
pressure, but a little bit of handholding always helps.
Yeah.
So, looking ahead, what do you think are some of the most exciting developments we can expect in the area of food economics for the next 10 to
Yeah.
15 years?
Well, I feel like we're in an area where there is um, lots of shocks to the system going on. Um, like it's a it's a tumultuous place, and including the supermarket is just one aspect of it. So there are a lot of exogenous shocks,
Right.
policy shocks, whether it be tariffs, whether it be cuts to food assistance policy. And so for those people doing causal research, there's going to be a lot of really interesting ways to frame quasi experiments in the data and do really good causal work. So that
Hmm.
I mean, people had already obviously begun doing that with COVID, um, but there's going to be all sorts of exogenous shocks that people look at the impacts of. So that's one thing. But then the other type of shock, I mean, you might call more endogenous. These are things like obesity drugs.
That's right.
And so the impact on food economics is going to be huge with those sort of things. And um, this year at the AAEA meetings, Brian Rowe, the incoming president, his presidential address spoke to this in the sense that we're going to have to rethink a little bit about the way we think of preferences.
Hmm.
Um, since a, a consumer, a consumer could take these obesity drugs, and it will change their preferences. And we're not, as an economic profession, we're not very well equipped to model that right now, but that's going to be a big change. We're going to need to do a better job at understanding, in Brian Rowe's words, sort of these endogenous preferences.
Right, right. Fascinating. So then, one of the main goals of these conversations is to provide an avenue for an opportunity for my guests to provide some advice and guidance,
Yeah,
especially to early career scholars tuning in. So, looking back, what is something that you wish someone had told you when you were starting out as a young professional in your field?
yeah. So I can think of maybe two things that I'll bring up if I have enough time. One is the opposite of the advice that I got, and that is, well, maybe people do give this advice, and that is to try not to stress about the tenure clock. My first department head told me to put my tenure date, up on the wall and stare at it every single day. And I rejected that
Mhm.
advice, and I didn't like that at all. Instead, I'm a big believer in just doing your job. Like, do the hard work of your job. Keep your nose to the grindstone, do high quality research as best you can, teach as best you can. And if you do those two things, everything will work out. That's a huge believer in just doing your job.
That's right.
Um, as well as you can. So that's maybe one thing. And the other piece of advice, I'm not really sure how to frame this, but you know, I've been the faculty mentor a lot of times at Penn State for new faculty. And of course, the standard piece of mentoring advice is to help mentees figure out ways to say no to things. And it's not like I want to diminish that, but I want to sort of consider the flip side in the sense that I feel like my own career has benefited immensely from all the times that I said yes to things. And it's really saying yes to things that allow you to grow, um, expand your horizons. And so I don't know. I try not to give that advice about saying no to everything.
Mhm.
I've begun instead to think about it more in a people sense. And so instead of saying yes or no to tasks, we are actually saying yes or no to people. And there are plenty of people I will never say no to. People that I owe a lot to, have
Right.
done a lot for me. They always get a yes.
Hmm.
And people that are new faculty, if they need help, I'm going to say yes.
Of course.
Um, and so I think we need to rethink the way we frame that decision, and it should be a people-based decision that might help us know when to say yes, um, as opposed to saying no to all the time.
That's a great piece of advice. Can I tell you a little story?
Yeah,
I don't
sure.
want to be carry for too long, but I agree about not saying no. It has never impacted me. Saying yes has never been bad for me. Yes to things, yes to people.
Yeah.
The only time that I still remember and regret saying no is when I was a graduate student. Steve Smith had asked me to be the instructor of a microclass for MS students.
Ah,
I was so ill prepared and I thought that I would do such a bad job that I told Steve, and this was right in front of the Armsby computer lab, that sorry, Steve, I cannot do this. And Steve, being so nice, he didn't push me. I regret that decision.
uh-huh.
And this was a conversation I had, I think, in 2007, and then we are in 2025. So I think, what, 18 years? I regret that. So,
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, so if he would have been a pusher, a coach who pushed people, maybe he would have got you to say yes.
Yes, and yeah, Steve is was great as I really liked him a lot. He's the first person who told me that if you want money, a PhD is not what you should be getting. He was joking, definitely. That was at our orientation picnic back in 2005.
Yeah.
But anyway, my last question for you is that are you open to being approached by other researchers who want to collaborate with you or just to interact with you? And if yes, what is the best way uh,
Uh,
to do that?
yeah, most definitely. Yes, this is one of these things that would always say yes to. Um, so I guess email is the best way to reach out to me for sure. And there aren't very many Jaenicke's around, and especially ag economist Jaenicke's. So um,
That's true.
it's easy to find me. Just
Fabulous.
shoot me an email. I'll be glad to talk.
And I know for sure that that is completely true. So everybody who wants new ideas and wants to work on food economics related issues, please feel free to, reach out to Ted. On that very positive note, Ted, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, it's been great talking.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye bye.